5-star shout out. I'm not gonna say it because I don't believe in it. I don't believe in. You can't make you know what I'm talking about.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the side, Jawn. I am your host, Sharon, the chocolate girl. Thank you for joining this morning. Very excited to be here. Got kind of a serious show today. Not a lot of fun and games to talk about today. No, we're not talking relationships and all that stuff, all the usual things we talk about, but we're actually going to talk about something different today. I think that because of, in light of the things that have been happening lately, especially on the political front, that it was important to get in touch with the nation. So I posted yesterday a little bit about a little teaser about I'm Just a Bill. I guess those of you familiar with Schoolhouse Rock know what that is. But in case you don't, Schoolhouse Rock was a Saturday morning show that used to come on and would actually educate people. Fancy that, huh? And one of the shows that they had was called I'm Just a Bill. And it just taught how bills become law in Congress. It involves the president and the Congress, both House and Senate, and all of that. So I just thought it would be interesting to get a little bit into that, to tell you some things that you need to know. As you know, here on the side, Jawn, we are not only here to entertain, but we are here to inform and educate as well. We're just here to help. So with that being said, I hope everybody's had a good week. I did. It's Saturday morning, favorite day. So let's get started. Okay. So let me just start by saying politics sucks. I know it sucks. It's boring. It's uncomfortable. It's about the government, and that sucks. I mean, we don't like to talk or think about it. In fact, I'm from a time when adults never talked about who they voted for. It was personal and inappropriate to even ask somebody who they voted for. Unless you were into politics or in politics, most people did not tend to sit around and just talk about it. Well, my family was different. At the dinner table, we talked about it, amongst other things. We talked about everything at our dinner table. So what I learned is that my family is not most families. Okay. In fact, a significant majority of Americans, specifically those age 18 to 34, are unable to name a U.S. senator from their home state. 77% of this age group could not identify a senator at all, be it in their home state or not. Additionally, only 16% of Latinos and 10% of African Americans could correctly identify a senator from their state. So just sit with that. Your senator, your U.S. senator, the person tasked to go to Washington and represent your entire state, including you. You don't know who it is. Can't even say their name. They didn't ask in the poll, have you ever seen them or talked to them? They didn't even ask if you know what they did. They just wanted to know a name. You couldn't, they couldn't even say that. So why is this a big deal? Do you know what a U.S. senator is responsible for? Well, the data says that about 60% of y'all watching today, maybe 80, don't. So looking at elections, the year we elect a president always has the highest voter turnout. The problem is the president should not be the most important position to vote for. Shouldn't be. You heard the line, politics is local, right? Well, it is. Who you vote for in your local, your county, your state elections, that's way more important than the president. That is until you get a lunatic mob boss in office, but that's a whole different story. But supposedly your local elections are more important. They affect you more directly on a daily basis. So get your pen or whatever you take notes out. I'm going to let you know a few things about your federal government and why you need to know who your U.S. senator is and what their power is, okay? So first of all, people argue all the time. This is not a democracy. It's a republic. No, it's a democratic republic. It's both. And what that means is we have a system of checks and balances in it. One particular branch of government cannot become the most powerful and more powerful than the other. So we have a checks and balances system. So the Constitution regulated this. This is why the Constitution is important, to know what it is. It's not just about your First Amendment rights. It's not just about your Second Amendment rights. You need to know the whole Constitution, what it does and what it dictates and what it spells out. So per the Constitution, our government is divided into three branches: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branch. It was very important when they laid out this country to do it this way because it gave specific powers to each branch. It set up those checks and balances. The point was to make sure not one branch would be able to control too much power, and it created a separation of powers. So here's some examples of how the different branches work together. So the legislative branch makes the laws, but the president in the executive branch can veto those laws with the presidential veto. The legislative branch makes the laws, as I said, but the judicial branch can declare those laws unconstitutional, which means out of here. The executive branch, through the federal agencies, has responsibility for day-to-day enforcement and administration of federal laws. These federal departments and agencies have missions and responsibilities that vary widely, from environmental protection to protecting the nation's borders, to protecting people, children, everything. The president in the executive branch can veto a law, but the legislative branch can override that veto with enough votes. See how this is working back and forth? The legislative branch has the power to approve presidential nominations, control the budget, they have the power of the purse, and can impeach the president and remove him or her from office. The executive branch can declare executive orders. We've all heard about these executive orders as of late, right? Which are like proclamations that carry the force of law, but the judicial branch can declare those acts unconstitutional. The judicial branch interprets laws, but the president nominates Supreme Court justices, Court of Appeals judges, and district court judges who make the evaluations. So that's how the president can check the judicial branch. The judicial branch interprets laws again, but the Senate in the legislative branch confirms the president's nominations for judicial positions, and Congress can impeach any of those judges and remove them from office. So now you know who has what power. Just remember, the Congress has the right and the power to impeach and remove the president and vice president from office. Just want you to remember that. Not sure everybody knows that. That's who can get rid of them. There's a separation of powers, and that's the model that divides the government into those three branches. So by having these multiple branches, as I said before, nobody gets more powerful. In the federal government, Article 1 of the Constitution established that legislative branch. That is Congress. Congress in addition to other responsibilities, is responsible for creating the laws. So as a general rule, the non-delegation doctrine prohibits the legislative branch from delegating its lawmaking responsibilities. So they can't just put it off on the president or the Supreme Court or some other body to make these laws. No, Congress, you're elected to create these laws, and that's what you're going to do. So Congress can, however, provide agencies with regulatory guidelines if it provides them with an intelligible principle to base their regulations on. That's Congress. That's why we have the agencies that work under the executive branch, but we'll get to that next. So Article 2 established the executive branch. That's the president's office, the White House. The president approves and carries out the laws created by the legislative branch, which is who? The legislative branch is Congress. So remember, the president approves and carries out the laws, but the laws are created by Congress, not the president. Article 3 of the Constitution establishes the judicial branch, which consists of the United States Supreme Court. The judicial branch interprets the laws passed by the legislative branch, and then they can say whether or not it meets the test of the Constitution or not. If it's unconstitutional, then that law is gone. It's dismissed, and we don't go by it. So let's talk a little bit about impeachment. Some branches have some power to appoint or remove members from the other branches. So Congress can impeach and convict the president for high crimes like treason or bribery. The House of Representatives has the power to bring impeachment charges against the president. So they file the charges, they raise the question. The Senate has the power to actually do the convicting of the president and remove the president from office through the trial. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court presides over the Senate during the trial. Checks and balances, folks. This is how it all works together. Not one branch is in control. Okay? Those judges can be removed from office by impeachment in the House of Representatives and conviction in the Senate as well. As most of you know, when you are appointed a justice of the Supreme Court, you serve for life or until you decide to retire. The other way you can get out of there is by impeachment. So decision, death, or impeachment. That's how you leave the Supreme Court. Okay? So in this way, the system provides a measure in addition to invalidating laws for each branch to check the others. So the power of impeachment can remove someone from office, and should Congress vote to do so, also disqualify an impeached individual from holding future office. I'm going to repeat that. The power of impeachment can both remove someone from office, and should Congress vote to do so, they got to vote to do so, also disqualify an impeached individual from holding future office. Fines and potential jail time for crimes committed while in office are left to the civil courts. So the civil court will decide that. So what's some grounds for impeachment? Treason, bribery, or any misconduct by public officials against the government, which we can call high crimes and misdemeanors. That is why you can be impeached as a federal person in office. Okay? Treason and bribery, accepting gifts or monetary gifts, or doing something for monetary gain. Like somebody says, hey, I'll pay you this money if you pass this law or if you veto this law. That's bribery. Can't do that. Treason, any action against the government. When you are sworn in as president, You are affirming that you will protect the nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. When you commit treason, you're an enemy. You're a domestic enemy. That's what you are. And you should be impeached and thrown out of office and prevented from ever running again. Now, that part is opinion. That's my opinion. I'm just here to really tell you what's going on and how it works. So this is the process. The Judiciary Committee, you may have heard that, they preside over the impeachment resolution. So a lawmaker in the legislative branch of the House of Representatives, they introduce an impeachment request in a Judiciary Committee meeting. Excuse me. They discuss and decide if they're going to open it up to the whole House of Representatives. So it's a short committee, a smaller committee, like a subcommittee is what they call them. And they will discuss in that subcommittee, should we open this up for consideration by the whole House body? If they do, they initiate the proceedings by passing the resolution authorizing the inquiry into this issue and this person. They vote, and it only requires a simple majority. So if there's 50, if 26 people say yes, it's going forward. That's what a simple majority means. So the House appoints the committee to oversee the trial in the Senate, and they serve as prosecutors. So the House of Representatives will send a delegation to the Senate to serve as the actual prosecutors in trial. And remember, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court oversees the whole thing over in the Senate. So to remove an official by impeachment after this trial, if they're found guilty of the high crimes and misdemeanors charged with, a 2/3 majority vote is required in the Senate trial. So the House of Representatives, they're the representatives in Congress, they're not voting on this, only the senators. There's 2 senators from every state. There's 50 states. That's 100 senators. They need 2/3 majority vote to actually impeach the person found guilty in the trial. Same process for the judges. If we find out there's a judge doing some treason or bribes or anything like that, or accepting faulty gifts like they're not supposed to be accepting, like trips and boats and things of that nature on the side, the House of Representatives can vote to file impeachment and go forward with the trial, move the trial over to the Senate. Chief Justice presides over it in the Senate. 2/3 majority vote for it. If they found guilty, they're out of there. That's how it works. Checks and balances, folks. So judges, let's talk about the judges. They depend on the executive branch to enforce court decisions. So if a law comes up or anything, the executive branch, the office of the president, is supposed to enforce the decisions made in their court. So it's the highest court, the Supreme Court in the United States. Article 3, like I said, of the U.S. Constitution created the court and authorized Congress to pass laws establishing a system of lower courts. So there's lower federal courts, and they're all over the country. They're not just in Washington. The Court of Appeals, there's 13 appellate courts that sit below the U.S. Supreme Court. They're the U.S. Courts of Appeal. They are tasked with determining whether the law was applied correctly in the trial court or federal administrative agency. So what does that mean? Law is passed that this particular agency, let's say the Department of Health and Human Services, they're supposed to follow this XYZ law. Somebody can raise an issue in the appellate court. They can appeal that law to the appellate court and say, hey, they're not administrating this, they didn't apply this correctly. This should not be a law, and they can appeal it. And if the Court of Appeals strikes it down, then that law again is removed. There's district courts, federal district courts. We have 94 district or trial courts, and they're called U.S. district courts. They resolve disputes by determining the facts and applying the law to those facts. So if there's a dispute in a department of government, they settle it. There's bankruptcy courts. Bankruptcy courts, there's 90 of them. And they help people and businesses who can't pay their debts get a fresh start. So you can file chapter 7, chapter 11, chapter whatever. But those are federal courts when you step in those buildings to go to bankruptcy court. So the Constitution states that federal judges are to be nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate, not the House, the Senate. So they hold office during good behavior. They can't act a fool. They got to have good behavior, and it's typically for life. Congressional impeachment, federal judges can be removed from office for their misbehavior. Okay. What do? They receive cases that deal with the constitutionality of the law, cases involving the laws and treaties of the U.S., cases involving ambassadors and public ministers, disputes between two or more states, like Ohio and Michigan, when they were battling way back in the day. The U.S. Supreme Court had to settle that dispute. Admiralty in bankruptcy law, federal courts preside over that. So why am I talking about this? So during the election, I had many conversations with people about their choices. When I would ask them why they were voting for the person, doesn't matter really what level, they would the answers they would give me were varied. But I noticed one thing, excuse me, many of them left out of their answers was not many of them said that they want to protect our democracy and the republic. That is, until after they actually read Project 2025, if they read it at all. So this past election, the volume of misinformation that was going around was alarming. People I saw as educated and politically aware people were saying things about the structure of our government that's entirely not true. And they're basing their vote on it. They were also saying erroneous things about economics and how our economy is affected by different policy, like tariffs. So many people believe that the American citizens wouldn't have to pay for the tariffs this dude was going to enact, right? He told us he was going to do them. So when I would say we would have to pay, our prices are going to go up, our costs and prices, they chose to believe him and not me. So what do you do when people refuse to listen to what you know is true? It's like dealing with children. You just keep repeating it and call them out until they get it, or you just don't say anything else about it anymore. I chose the latter because it just came down to, I'm tired. If you don't care to listen and I'm giving you facts and you want to believe the ramblings of a tyrant and believe him, go right ahead. So politics, something I have been passionate about since I was about 10 years old. I won't bore you with how that happened and that whole story, though I have told that on the side, Jawn, before. But as I got older, I learned how important the idea of politics is, especially when I was in college. Most people hate politics. Everybody is corrupt. This is what people think. They hate it. Everybody's corrupt in politics. Nothing changes. I don't understand how it works anyway. I don't want to get involved with it. And as adults, many times we have to do things we don't like to or want to do to live, right? So we need to get involved. We need to understand. So not everybody wants to go to their job every day, but they do. Why? Because they have to. That's the same thing about politics. That's how I feel. So if this past election has not taught some of you yet that not paying attention to or knowing anything about the political arena can be downright deadly, then I don't know what to tell you. Look at the flooding in Texas. You can look at that as a prime example. If you know, you know. If you don't care about you or your loved ones being harmed or killed by the outcome of some of these actions taken by this current federal administration and some of these state legislatures, like mine, then hey, you just keep doing what you're doing. But if you do care and really want the best for posterity, the generations that's coming up behind you, your grandchildren, here's mine, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and so on, then you better grow up, read with understanding, and ask questions of those who do know so you can understand. So I'll end with this. Many people think this last big bill passed by Congress and signed by the POTUS is a good thing because it'll cut down on welfare, i.e. Medicaid fraud. They believed the propaganda that this was the only thing the bill does. They're standing around at the water cooler saying, yeah, now some of that money can be funneled down to me and get their butts off the couch and reduce my taxes or help my state. Wrong. That is not what's happening with this bill. First of all, understand that Medicaid provides health care access for low-income individuals and families, including those who are working, those who are not working, and those who are unable to work due to various circumstances. It's not just for people who choose not to work. Like people say that's what it's for. That's what he said, of course. So that's what people think. So the majority of recipients are not working. But guess what? They're not able-bodied and just lying around on the couch like most of you bozos out there are saying. The majority of them who are not working are children, elderly, who cannot physically or mentally work, or they're working age adults with disabilities. So many of the able-bodied working age adults who receive Medicaid are on it because they are the caregivers to an elderly or disabled family member that requires their care 24/7, and they can't afford to put them in a rehab or nursing facility or to hire an in-home nurse. So they have to get Medicaid. So they may not be working, taking care of the family member. They need health insurance. They don't have it. They can't afford the Affordable Care Act amount. So they're on Medicaid. That's not lying on the couch. So that leads to the next thing I want to mention. For decades, some lawmaker, always of the conservative party, proposes work requirements in order to receive Medicaid. They do this despite the fact that research has proven that the majority of Medicaid recipients who are able to work are already working. Work requirements do nothing but create red tape and barriers to accessing needed health care for citizens who cannot work. It does nothing to save taxpayer dollars like they allege it will. They've been alleging this for decades, y'all. The data is out there if you want to find it. You don't have to listen to me. I'm telling you, it doesn't save taxpayer money. States have tried it at the state medical assistance level and welfare benefit level. The results are always the same, yet people consistently across generations believe the lie. It's maddening. It's a lie, man. So this bill currently does way more than cut Medicaid. Nursing homes are huge recipients of Medicaid funding. Bet y'all didn't know that. The cuts will cause many of them to close. The cuts in the bill includes all kinds of funding to assist those who do not have Medicaid and have no health insurance to pay for treatment. The cuts will close hospitals, mainly the rural ones. Rural ones are important. The cuts will eliminate the federal school lunch program, cutting out free and reduced lunch funding for millions of children. Hunger has been proven to be a leading reason for the occurrence of behavior issues in school-aged children. So you think we will see a rise in more school incidents? Yeah, I would say so. So this bill also cuts funding for research, which will devastatingly impact universities all over the country. No big deal. Do you understand what key part university-sponsored research has been in critical medical advancement for decades? I mean, decades. I know my university is one of the highest ranked research universities in the nation. Meals on Wheels, one of the most successful food programs we have. Cut. I could go on and on. But I'm not trying to be political. I'm just telling you some facts of what has happened here. Not saying you should vote either way. I'm just saying you need to know what's going on and what the consequences are of the actions being taken. So what do we do now? We have to now rely on who? The legislative branch, which is Congress, to get a conscience and stop what's going on. That's if you think that it should be stopped. You might agree with the bill, and that's fine. That's fine. I'm just saying, if for those of us who do not agree with the bill, we at this point, at this moment, have to rely on Congress to grow a conscience and stop what's going on. And I've already stated what they have the power to do. So Congress has the power to impeach and remove a president and the vice president. And right now, they're in lockstep with this administration. So there's been a couple of them who've spoken out against what's happening, but the majority are with them. So I live right here in North Carolina. Senator Tom Tillis is one of the most vicious senators I have ever seen when it comes to program cutting and children and minorities and protections. But he drew a line at this bill and spoke out against it. I guess because he announced he is not running for re-election and felt he couldn't be harmed by the current president, that he grew a conscience and spoke out. So this is also one of the senators who said the president would approve extension of Biden's funding for the victims in North Carolina of Hurricane Helene. But he didn't. The president said no to all these thousands of North Carolinians who voted for him. We have a Democratic governor, and that is his priority, to hurt this state because of party affiliations. So damn the people, that's what he said. Those people in Western North Carolina cannot believe it. But we tried to tell them. They laughed it off, said, leave us alone. We take care of our own, and I'm rolling with this guy. Well, I guess now they will get a chance to take care of their own, literally, because he did not approve the extension. The state only has so much funding to give them. The deep pockets are at the federal level. So help is not coming from the current administration. I'm praying for those people out in Western Carolina. So I'll leave you with this too. Talking about the structure of the government operations in this country, like I said at the beginning, is some boring work. There's nothing exciting about it. It's not as exhilarating as sports. It's not as funny as the comedy scene. It's not as entertaining as a music concert. It's not as salacious as reality shows or relationship questions about, should the man buy the stepchild food or just his own food, child food, stuff like that. It's not. But guess what? None of the things that I just listed will protect your rights as a U.S. citizen. None of those things will get you a lower tax bill or a better career or education funding for your kids. If you don't love yourself enough to pay attention, like I said earlier, then do so for the ones you do love. If you have little children now, you especially need to pay attention and learn where to get credible information about what's going on. So since scammers have digital access to media all messed up with misinformation, calling themselves satire and all this stuff, fake stuff, and due to AI, sometimes you can't tell what's real and what's fake. I say get your butt off the couch the same way you think these Medicaid recipients ought to. Get in your car or on the subway or the bus, Uber, whatever, or go on foot. Go to your local library, if you can find it, and do something groundbreaking. Read. Actually read. If you prefer to do something groundbreaking and read, but you don't want to go to the library, order them online. So here's some books that I recommend for you. We the People by Theodore Lowy, Margaret Weir, Benjamin Ginsberg, and several others. This book is often found in private high schools, reading lists. Notice I said private, not public, and universities. We the People. That's the name of the book. The second one, How Fascism Works. Fascism, Fascism. How Fascism Works. The Politics of Us and Them. That's by Jason Stanley. This book clearly explains the current national dilemma of democracy versus authoritarianism. Why it's scary. All of that. What you should know about politics, but don't. A nonpartisan guide to the issues that matter. That's by Jessamine Conrad. It's a reliable source that's free of political spin. She didn't put any political spin in it. Democrat, Republican, independent, green, libertarian, none of it. It's just all fact-based. I've read that one. And I'm telling you, there's no political spin in it. So if you really want to know about how politics works, read it. These books are reliable and they're fact-based books. So I'm off my soapbox now. So my final thoughts today are, people, let's just care. Okay? We lack empathy in this nation right now. I'm going to tell you a brief story. I'll never forget this. Look, I personally have battled and beaten cancer and liver ailments resulting from chemo multiple times. Praise God. A few years ago, I was in a situation where I had no health insurance coverage to pay for meds and to treat my liver damage and the chemo and all that. Didn't have it. So a friend, a person who I had just met, didn't know much about me. I didn't know much about him. Heard about what was going on with me. Just on a humble, just heard about it. And he reached out to a circle of friends and asked them to send me money to help out. I didn't ask for it, but he felt care and compassion enough to do this. That act right there, and those who responded with those donations saved my life. Those guys didn't know me very well either. The ones that he asked to give money and him, they all gave money. And I had just met them all, but they cared. They showed compassion. And because of them, I'm here. Some of them may be listening this morning. If you are, you know who you are. And I'm forever grateful and will always love you for that. We need more of this in this country right now. I cannot imagine going about my business and all of a sudden I'm surrounded by ICE agents, thrown in a car and then in a cage, never seeing my family or a lawyer or anything. And I'm an American citizen. It's happening to American citizens. I just can't imagine that. There are people that's cheering this. They have no compassion, no empathy, no care. And as a nation, we the people will decide whether or not this is who we want to be. We can either act or do nothing and let the chips fall as they may. So thank you for joining me on the side, Jawn. We're here every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time on the Ignorant Thinkers podcast page and the Chocolate Writer page on YouTube and Facebook. That's where you'll find me. Sorry for the delay this morning. Had to get some technical things taken care of. And yeah, thank you for joining me. I hope you read one of those books. For the last time, the names, We the People, How Fascism Works, The Politics of Us and Them, and What You Should Know About Politics But Don't, a nonpartisan guide to the issues that matter. All right, folks, until next time.